welcome back to this Money Monday edition of Liquid Lunch on Newsmax TV. I'm John Tobacco. It's Money Monday here. We'll be talking about money. We'll be talking about politics. We'll be talking about all that great stuff that we missed over the weekend, and everything that's breaking today will come to you live as we do every day, Monday to Friday, Eastern, from the Question Tequila Studios. Today we are high atop Midtown Manhattan at the Newsmax headquarters, and it is just past high noon Eastern here in New York. And at high noon Eastern here in New York, the Dow Jones was down modestly, about 20 points, still holding that 27 number, which it did over the weekend and Friday, which I thought was a strong close on Friday. I'm expecting a little volatility during this week with relation to the geopolitical stuff that's out there with Iran, and we'll get to all that later in the show. But later this week, we're going to get some reports out of the government on GDP. Anything stable or growing in the GDP will be good news for the markets. Any downturn at all could signal the end of this month, Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve making a bigger than expected 25 basis points, maybe a 0.5%. But we'll be keeping our eye closely on the GDP and the markets for the week. The cryptocurrency is stabilizing here just above 10,000, with Bitcoin at 10,300. I think some consolidation at this level is good news for you and for Bitcoin. Do your homework, make sure it's suitable for you, but keep your eye on that Bitcoin, and keep your eye on the show now, because it's only going to get better, as my co-host and managing editor, Frank Morano, joins me. Frank, happy Money Monday.
Money Monday. Happy Money Monday to you as well,
yes.
John. I hope it's profitable for you and all of our viewers today. There is a ton of stuff happening in the news, but there are a couple of stories you didn't hear anything about because they really didn't involve making Donald Trump look stupid. So let me tell you about one of those stories, which is exactly what I'll be speaking frankly about. Well, if you turned on any of the Sunday shows yesterday, you know that Donald Trump is a racist. It's not even debatable. And one of those people making such a declarative statement is Congressman Elijah Cummings, who did so on ABC News' This Week while talking to George Stephanopoulos.
I've never, in my total of 37 years in public service, ever heard a constituent say that they were scared of their leader.
Scared of their leader? Scared of the President of the United States?
Of the President of the United States. That's exactly right.
Do you believe President Trump is a racist?
And I've been in politics 37 years. Go ahead. What'd you say?
Do you believe President Trump is a racist?
I believe he is. Yes, no doubt about it.
So now that we know that President Trump is a racist, maybe we can stop there. Well, actually, according to Cory Booker, he's worse than a racist. He said so on CNN's State of the Union.
This is a guy who is worse than a racist. He is actually using racist tropes and racial language for political gain. He's trying to use this as a weapon to divide our nation against itself.
Let's look at Donald Trump's record on race and compare it to the people that are running against him. Well, you know what? If he's a racist, he's the first racist that I know of that brags about how many jobs that he's created in the black community. But you know what happened on Friday? 3,100 inmates were released from federal prison because of legislation that Donald Trump signed. And do you know what color a number of them were? Well, take a look at this gentleman that was freed and then came to the White House in April.
2 months ago, I was in a prison cell, and I'm in the White House. Let's continue to make America great again.
That's right. Cory Booker, who was actually a co-sponsor of the First Step Act and a guy who's been campaigning for it for a long time, and a guy who, if I'm not mistaken, was actually at the White House for the bill signing, he knows better than this. Don't be fooled. The president deserves a lot of credit for getting more people out of prison. That's more people that are going to be taxpayers, and that's fewer people that you're paying the bill to incarcerate. Good for you, Donald Trump. You are a hero to the black community and those that have been incarcerated by laws that were sponsored by Joe Biden, signed by Bill Clinton, and implemented by Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, who just recently discovered that she loves groups like Black Lives Matter, she was such a hardliner, she took no position when they put sentencing reform on the ballot in California. And in fact, there was a guy that was wrongfully incarcerated for 28 years. Kamala Harris, as both Attorney General and as DA, did whatever she could to keep this poor slob in jail. So when it comes to race, you ask yourself the question, is Donald Trump a racist? Or are people like Joe Biden, Bill Clinton, and Kamala Harris, who've done whatever they could to incarcerate black youth around the country for decades, are they the racists?
Well, Frankie, very insightful stuff. And, to that first part where Elijah Cummings says he's been in office for 37 years and he's never had a constituent say they were afraid of their leaders. I'm afraid because Elijah Cummings is one of our leaders, and he sits up there proselytizing about racism and institutional racism and all this other stuff, when I think that his voice could be spent in a lot of other ways. And by the way, Donald Trump, this guy, right now boasting the lowest African-American unemployment rate in history, so that's pretty good. And as Frankie noted in the Frankly Speaking, about 40% of the U.S. prison population is African-American. So just last week, when 3,000 people were freed because Donald Trump's First Step Act overturned Joe Biden's crime bill, about 1,200 American citizens who were involved in small or nonviolent crimes were released from jail thanks to Donald Trump, and Kim Kardashian and Kanye West were advocates for that stuff, too. So I don't know how they can keep calling the guy a racist, Frank, when, it's becoming like crazy. He's doing statistically great things for the African-American community.
He's freed more black prisoners than President Obama has. I mean, if he's a racist, then he's my kind of racist, because he's bragging about record lows, as you mentioned, in terms of unemployment in the black community and wage growth in the black community. That's not something a racist usually does. If you hate black people, you don't usually run around saying, hey, by the way, look at all the black people I got jobs for. You do whatever you can to oppress black people. If he's a racist, he's the only racist I know of that makes an effort to free a lot of nonviolent drug offenders who happen to be black out of prison. Now, we remember how Hillary Clinton characterized these people 25 years ago. She called them super predators.
Yeah.
So with Donald Trump's record on race is pretty clear. Does he tweet or talk sometimes like Archie Bunker? Sure. Does he say things I wish he didn't? Absolutely. But come on, give it a rest. There's so many legitimate issues to criticize the president about. Why waste your breath and your time on this?
We keep talking about this, but this whole race thing, 3 weeks ago, Joe Biden was the racist. Then Nancy Pelosi was the racist from her own people. Cory Booker was calling Joe Biden a racist. Then the squad was calling Nancy Pelosi a racist. Now Donald Trump is the racist. It's getting to the point where, they're wearing out the word racist.
Right, the boy who cried racist.
And not only that, but I'm watching this guy. I'm watching Morning Joke this morning. And the show is just ridiculous. I mean, it tries to set the agenda for the day of be as rotten and horrible to Trump as possible. But they got this guy on there, Eddie Glaude, who basically was talking about how the Democratic message for 2020 needs to be, if you stand with Trump, then you are a racist and a xenophobe. So he's basically saying, anyone who votes for Trump, who likes what he's doing for the economy, likes what he's doing for America, you are a racist. And it's scary, Frank, when the policy is shifting towards saying anyone that supports Trump is a racist.
Well, I don't even know why you would give that show or that guest any credibility or any attention by mentioning him. Nobody takes them seriously. I mean, that program in the morning is basically just nothing but anti-Trump propaganda.
Yeah,
I mean,
with Joe and Mika sitting in their living room down in West Palm Beach. They're never even in the studio anymore. It's so obvious. And by the way, if you're watching any of these ridiculous shows in the morning, just so you know, from 8 to 9, you're watching a replay of what happened from 6 to 7. So the commitment to real breaking news is not exactly there.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. Well, it's going to be an interesting show coming up. I'm excited to hear Richard Roth and Robert Hornak, break down some of these issues, especially as relates to Trump versus the Squad. And I can't wait to hear their preview of Robert Mueller's testimony on Wednesday. Now, we're actually going to be on the air while Mueller's testifying on Wednesday, so maybe we can bring people part of it live and give some kind of live commentary as it unfolds.
If we went like live breaking news, like split screen, like an actual, that would be really
This
big.
is going to be Robert Mueller's 89th trip to testify before Congress.
Ouch.
That makes him, apparently, the person who has testified before Congress more than anyone in history.
Really?
Yeah.
So he's actually the world record holder. The Guinness Book World Records for most trips to Congress.
Most trips to Capitol Hill, absolutely.
And I'm pretty sure that he told them that he's not going to say anything that's outside of the four corners of what he's already written in his report.
I mean, these hearings, I'm eager to see what happens, because there's a lot of questions that I have for Robert Mueller that I'm happy to see if someone asks. But each member gets only 5 minutes, so you can't really ask any follow-up questions. It's a joke. It's more about getting the member of Congress on TV than anything else. But, I mean, we'll see what Mueller says.
Well, Gerald Nadler, in a small side note the other day, said that they're going to hope for we're going to have them in, we're going to hope for the best. So let's hope it doesn't blow up in their face like one of those Wile E. Coyote cigars. When people start asking questions about the Clinton campaign and the Clinton campaign giving $5 million to Perkins Coie to buy the dossier, which they leaked to James Comey. Let's hope Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, let's hope all this stuff doesn't blow up in their face when real stuff comes out, because everything's on the table now, right?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what the scope of their questions is, people in both parties. And then I hope we can, a little bit later, go into what's happening with Iran, because Iran, as of this morning, they said 17 American-backed spies have been arrested, some of them even sentenced to death. So things don't seem to be calming down in the Middle East anytime soon.
Well, I think what Trump will do is probably arrest 117 Iranian spies here in the U.S. to up them a little bit. But the stuff that you hear, it's all propaganda. Iran is really putting this stuff out for their own people. Hey, these evil Americans, we got 17 of them. We're going to kill them. This is all saber-rattling, folks. And when it came down to it, Donald Trump did the sensible thing. He asked for some negotiations. I'm asking you to stay right there, because coming up right after this, we're going to mix it up with Richard Roth and Robert Hornak.